It's the 27th for the 10th, 2025, Monday. That can only mean one thing. It's the day after the race weekend before, and that there are very many multitudinous F1 centric threads at which we need to know must pull. We'll talk about Oscar trying to pick up the pieces to his driver's campaign. So too, we'll talk about Liam Lawson and the dangers that the FIA and their ineptitudes put in front of him. We'll talk about ESPN article, George's 1+1 now apparently official. So too, we'll talk about the beef between George and Max. Max says, you know what, if you want to get me a penalty, I do not care. That's your problem, not mine. We'll talk about cost cap gate, of course, Mercedes by dint of Joe Sayward. So too, we'll talk about the decision to keep or sack Yuki Tsunoda. It will get techier than techie things. And also there's rumour of an F1 sale. Do you know what I mean? As if it could get more salacious chat. Go on then. In the first instance, I've got to show you some things. Listen, you will forgive me for going scorched earth so early on into the Monday night show, but they leave me with no other option. The FIA. Context is this. Mohammed Ben Sulayem is set to run a post in December. He's been politicking, and yeah, that's fine for him. But again, all the keyking and attention seeking, being the Beyonce to the Kelly Rowland of the drivers, that would all fade to black if he did his job. Bill Belichick settings, another case in point at the Mexican Grand Prix of the lad, the institution that he heads is not doing its job. Lest we forget, the FIA, the regulatory body of a multi-billion-dollar sports enterprise in F1. So what are we doing here? Surely they need to be fit for purpose as far as the extent to which they wrap their hands even around the sport that is F1. Here's what happened. Could have been a brilliant race, right? It built and built and built. It was Max Verstappen in the dying embers, closing down on the gearbox of one Charles Leclerc. It was cinema. It was pant-wetting suspense levels. It was brilliantly blockbuster. And then what happened? Some bod, some race director, some noddy at the FIA decided they'd make a decision to bring out a virtual safety car with 2 laps to go. Why? Well, it must be Carlos Sainz, right? He must have stopped in the middle of the track. He must have got out. Something must have happened. He must have blown an engine. There must have been some oil on the track. There must have been some impending danger to destroy, to take away from F1 fans such pant-wetting cinema and suspense. Take a look on the right of your screen. You can barely see Carlos Sainz Jr. Carlos Sainz Jr. had removed himself from the automotive pugilistic equation. There was no need for a virtual safety car, therefore FIA. This is asymmetric risk, is it not? Of course, you can never be too safe. I get it. But if you are putting on a sports show, if this is sport and entertainment, then surely you've got to understand that in the dying embers of the Grand Prix, you're just about to get what everybody has watched as near as makes no difference, 68 laps for, in a firefight between Charles Leclerc and Maximilian Verstappen, for some say soon to be 5-time champion. And what do? Bring out an unnecessary virtual safety car. Yeah, of course, FIA. What else would we expect from them at this stage? But that's got to be an anomalous circumstance, surely. They couldn't do anything over the course of the Mexican Grand Prix race weekend worse than that. Well, they said, I will see you that and I will raise you this. Have you seen the onboard of Liam Lawson? This is techie chat, because we know that you don't play F1. It is dangerous, is now and always will be. There are drivers and stewards, marshals, who have unalived themselves in the course of doing their job. You have to know that. That's the reality of Formula One, that danger and risk are always front row, VIP seats at every single race. And that's why the FIA need to do their job. Bill Belichick second a Mexican Grand Prix early on, when Liam Lawson pit and came back out. Look what happened. There were marshals on the track. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? This is chaos. Absolutely unacceptable. The levels, no extent of the FIA's ineptitude at this juncture knows no bounds, and it only gets worse from different angles. I mean, What are you doing? What are we doing here? This makes no sense. That they could take such risk at the altar of incompetence is incredible. Now the FIA have come out and made a statement. They said, listen, they were under the impression that all the cars had passed and weren't aware of the fact that Liam Lawson had pitted. Well, this is why sometimes you got to get some eyes on tracks, touch some grass. Do you know what I mean? Connect yourself with the sport and its course. What are we doing here? This is just insane. Friend of the channel, Peter Windsor, always says that the problem with the FIA is that they're too busy with their heads buried in computers looking at telemetry, facts and stats before they get in the pits and touch the bloody tarmac, connect to the sport. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is surely proof positive of that chaos. Check out this one, video footage.
Bravo.
Ah, how close!
How dangerous. Wow.
Indeed, how dangerous. I want to watch it again because there's morbid curiosity. But you watch it with your heart firmly in your mouth, do you not?
Bravo.
Oh, mate. The FIA need to be ashamed of themselves. Listen, 2021, whatever, that was a fiasco. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes with Lewis Hamilton. Everybody's saying that, listen, the FIA need to sort it out, be more consistently consistent as opposed to more consistently inconsistent. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is unacceptable. That can be allowed to happen in 2025. Again, at the altar of their ineptitude. Multitudinous at this stage is ridiculous. Science is exhibit A. Liam Lawson and these marshals is exhibit B, C, D, E and F. Liam Lawson came out and he was like, mate, this is unacceptable. I could have unalived them. Indeed, they could have unalived me. Lest we forget 1977 Kailami, Tom Price. This has happened before to calamitous consequences. It's not good enough. I am left fuming at this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It isn't good enough. FIA get paid hundreds of millions, 100 million as near as makes no difference every single year to police this sport, to institute for the rules and regs in a way that is consistent across the board. They can't do that. So at least surely they need to wrap their not insubstantial arms around the safeguards of the sport. What are we doing here, chat? It's insane. It is insane. I want to talk to you about Lando and Norris up next because, oh, by the way, Lando and Norris is getting a lot of airtime at the altar of him getting booed. Now, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Lando and Norris. I've been overly critical of the dude, but I make no apology for that. When I see the dude on British Vogue as an example, and then he jumps into the car the next race weekend and doesn't perform, you'll forgive me for connecting some correlation/causation dots. You will forgive me. Lando Norris is a brilliant driver. It would be disingenuous of me to say anything other than that. But far too many times this season alone, he's left time on the table, left points on the table at the altar of unfulfilled potential. You know already. Last year, 2024, no one lost more places than Lando Norris on the first lap, 28, if I recall correctly. Ipso facto, he doesn't get good starts. As far as his qualifying pace in the dying embers, yet at Monaco, he nailed it. Yet of late, he started to nail it. Nailed the qualifying Q3 session this race weekend, just gone at Mexico. But on average, Lando has been a bit of a bottler. No, maybe bottler is a bit harsh. But he definitely leaves time on the table. Okay, so look, at Mexico, he scraps all that. It's like, Cameron, you know what, I'll see you that and raise you this. You've been talking all this gubbins, all of the Lando Norris naysayers, yourself included. Cameron, let me show you what I've got really. Of course, he had a car capable, but the performance was God tier. Again, it would be disingenuous of me to say anything but that. However, Lando got on the podium and the Mexican contingent made themselves clear. They are not the biggest Lando Norris fans, and to a man and woman, they could be heard roundly booing Lando Norris. He was asked a question to that effect at the post-race press conference, and here's what Lando Norris had to say.
I don't know. I don't know why, to be honest. And people can do what they want. Honestly, they have they have the right to do it if they want to do it. So I think that's sports sometimes. I don't know why I can't stop laughing when I get booed. So it's I think it makes it more entertaining for me. So yeah, they can keep doing it if they want. Of course, you don't want it. I prefer if people cheered for me.
Bless him. Struggling with it because Lando Norris cares. He's a sensitive soul. Safak says this booing is disgusting. No matter who it is, these drivers drive their AWS is off, but get booed as soon as they drive. And to your point, Safak, they risk their lives for our own entertainment, of course, for the glory. This is F1. This is Chariots of Fire. They get paid very handily to these F1 drivers, but yet and still, it's nothing to be sniffed at. So therefore, should these guys and girls be booing them? Really, the antithesis to that, the orthogonal point, fundamentally, no, diametrically opposed, goes something like this. This is sports entertainment now. More WWE than it was F1 in 1950, and fans will pay their hard-earned money to do whatever the fudge they want. If they love you, they will cheer for you. If they hate you, they will throw tomatoes at you. That, surely some will say, is their right as paying viewers, as paying ticket holders. And that's where it gets techie. Lando's like, you know what, I don't mind. But he looked like he was about to cry on the podium, did he? And on the back of that performance, I personally would argue, as again, a frequenter of the restaurant that is Sporting Endeavour par excellence. I listen, you wouldn't see me booing Lando. Not after that. But a die-hard Mexican contingent, I understand. The demographic, the diaspora from which Julio Cesar Chavez came, serious sporting culture over there in Mexico. And to that end, Lando Norris said, you know what, I don't care. Like, they can boo, they can cheer. I really don't. I'd rather they cheer, but whatever. I don't know why. The question he was asked, why does he think they are booing him? He says, you know what, I don't know. I couldn't tell you why they're booing him. And a Mexican journo stood up and responded this way, making it clearer than clear things.
Okay, Carlos Khalife from Fastmac. Let me give you a little bit of background on why the booing. It seems that the Mexican people think we did a poll that you're being given the championship. That's why the booing is coming. And we asked, what should Lando do? And they said, return the 3 points. That was the question that got the most percentage of the answers. So basically, that's the background of the booing in Mexico. I don't know about any other places. So would you be willing to return those 3 points?
Mate, what a gangster of a journalist. This is the context. You're not going to come up here and talk anything about the Mexican people. Allow me to enlighten you, hombre. That is chaos that the journalist have said, you know what, mate, there was a poll in Mexico and it was conducted and everybody thinks you're stealing the championship. No, being given it, that Zach Brown sees you as the prodigal son. Yesterday, it was Ayrton Senna's era. Shortly thereafter, Michael Schumacher's, and then Lewis's, and then now it's the Lando Norris era. That's Zach Brown's words, not mine. And if you can forgive, therefore, Oscar Piastri fans all around the world for being like, well, what's going on? Michael, that it wasn't the best question, but you got to see, I think the question that he wanted to ask Lando, but worded it poorly. How does it make you feel to be booed on the podium? That's the question that I would have put forth. But again, I don't have the opportunity. Not the best. Go on then, Mason. That from the journo, I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed it. That's a blast from a UFC press conference when it's open and honest dialogue back and forth. You can see the drivers, Max and Charles, sat adjacent to Lando, like, oh, this just got a bit techie. This is like, oh my God, this is chaos. Chaotic scenes I would enjoy. I tell you what, will do wonders for F1 and the viewing populace, attention dollars. If every press conference were like that, if it was more back and forth, if the accredited journos were not battle hardened, but more emboldened in their questions, less keen to manage for the stakehold of these drivers, these multi-million drivers, then I think everybody, it'd be blockbuster viewing. I think everybody would be tuning into an otherwise shirked, unloved post-race driver press conference. Oh, and by the way, a lot of news coming out today by dint of ESPN talking about George Russell's contract. You will know that Toto, the boy who cried wolf, flirted his eyes in perpetuity at the one that they call forcing to be five-time champion Max Emilian Verstappen. Toto, so keen to amend for the mistakes of Christmas past, had in his hand the opportunity to sign the next generation of driver in Max and decided not to. Stick with Lewis and Nico Rosberg. Then how did that work out? Well, as soon as he won the championship, he said, you know what, full stop, new paragraph, mate, I am out. Only enhancing, you would assume, the extent to which Toto, the boy who cried wolf, rues his low-level decision-making. Now, however, he has in his hand a George and a Kimi. George is the heir to Lewis Hamilton's throne, and that has to mean something. George has risen up from the ashes just like a phoenix on the back of mistakes made at Australia. There were a gazillion one of them. Singapore 2023, if I recall, yeeting it into the bloody barrier in the dying embers of the Grand Prix when he had himself at the very least a podium place in his hands. But George seems different now, more mature, a thinking and a thinking shooter of an F1 peddler. I think he's been one of the drivers of the year, if I'm being honest. So give him then a multi-year deal. There's a lot of speculation because when Mercedes announced finally, not that they're going to give George the multi-year deal that he deserves, but the wording was something to this effect, wasn't it? That we've decided to stick with our current lineup. What? George was just sat there thinking, well, just, you know what, forget it. Just go and sign Max now. You've made it clear. You've been on the yacht with Max. I get the picture. You're in front of the press and media talking about it would be fiduciary malfeasance as a CEO come principal and shareholder if you didn't pursue the best driver on the grid currently. Man who will get you anywhere between 2 and 3 tenths depending on who you talk to. Mention no names, Franz Stoss. And I get it. But I can envision, I can feel George Russell's pain permeating through the TV screen because I would be livid. Chat, you said that I was the one who was going to take Mercedes back to the mountaintop. You said it was me. You were invested in me and me only. But as soon as Max Verstappen came on the market, everything changed. What is that about, Sir John? You're a legend, mate. I am humbled, good sir. So I think King George Russell of Kingsley in Norfolk has got every right to be fuming, especially now that we realise, per the guys and girls over at ESPN, that George has signed a 1+1 deal, performance clause related, all over the place. If indeed, therefore, George is to get his multi-year deal in inverted commas, he will need to perform. There are performance clauses in that contract, as there usually are in F1, that go both ways. Meaning, therefore, if George drops the ball all of a sudden in 2026 next year, then Toto, the boy who cried wolf, has himself an open door, a free pass, therefore, to go and sign, fulfill his dream, amend for the mistakes of Christmas past, and sign one Max Emilian Verstappen. Oh, the humanity. Here's what I hope, though, chat, I'll be honest with you. I hope that George stays there in 2027. This is what I hope desperately. I think about this late at night and dream about it. I'm going to be honest with you. 2027, just picture this. Mercedes build themselves a god tier car in 2026. Sufficiently god tier. Brilliant as far as its power unit. 2014 all over again. Just like the split turbo hybrid. James Allison settings. He's told us that they're onto something not dissimilar, hasn't he? That the Petronas sustainable fuel is god tier and propels the Mercedes to a gap on the grid, durable competitive advantage, just like they had in 2014, ipso facto forcing the hand of the best driver currently on the grid, the one that they call Max Emilian Verstappen. George performs well, potentially wins himself a championship next year at the altar of durable competitive advantage, and then Max Verstappen, his hand is forced. 2027, George on one side of the garage, the Silver Arrows boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, Max Emilian Verstappen on the other. Oh, the humanity. Can you spell 1989 Senna and Prost? It's just chaos. George and Max in the same team. Listen, there is a healthy respect between them at the moment. But lest we forget, George has said, he told me that I want to put him... I'm going to put him on his... he's going to put me on my fudging head. You remember all that? Max Verstappen has the memory of an elephant. Don't get it twisted. Yeah, they'll talk in the cool-down room. And in the post-race presser, they'll exchange words and banter. Do you know what I mean? When they have a word about lines, there's a common denominator. There's no honour amongst F1 peddler thieves. I get it. There's a begrudging respect, because I think Max sees in George potentially the next one after him, the next tier down. Potentially. And this is why it's going to get techie. You're a legend, Nancy. I appreciate you, mate. Great channel, Cameron. Love the community. And again, listen, I take no credit for the community. This is you. This channel, this fan channel, this community drives and survives by dint of each and every single one of you turning up on the streams. I don't know where I go, where George goes with this. I feel like he will feel quite rightfully disrespected by this 1+1, particularly when it's been him who's put this W16 dog of a car on his not insubstantial shoulders and dragged it to 2 race wins, a pole, a couple of poles. I can't remember, but I digress. It's going to get techie over there at Mercedes, especially when you realise, because and by the way, there has been talk for the longest time about a breach. Once upon a time, it was McLaren. Some said it could potentially be Ferrari. Aston Martin have already done one of these, mea culpa. And again, their breach wasn't substantial. Aston Martin's breach was, what's the word I'm looking for? Formal? It was immaterial. There we go. He got there in the end. All Aston Martin failed to do, their breach was in they forgot to sign a document. What? How are these F1 teams so stupid? So there will be a nominal payment that Aston Martin will need to pay to the FIA to satisfy that breach. This is chaos. But there was another team that people have been talking about having breached the cost cap regulations, $165 million in 2024, inflation adjusted and adjusted for the extra 2 races that they're doing now. That team has a name, and that team is Mercedes AMG Petronas, according to Joe Sayward. He says that there's something else going on in the background, and all the talk over the course of the Mexican Grand Prix race weekend is that there is another, quote, issue around compliance with the cost cap that pertains now to Mercedes AMG Petronas. What happens next then? Clearly they'll pay something. They'll pay something, and then this will go away. Yesterday, it was Red Bull and their ABA, right, accepted breach agreement. It all went on behind closed doors to save everybody's PR and to save the teams so any form of reputational hazard. It's techie, this. I wish they'd peel back the fourth wall and let us see. I wish Mohammed Ben Sulayem that he campaigned, that he was true to his word, that the transparency upon which he campaigned in 2022, that he would deliver upon that. Now, I wish, but colour me naive. Maybe I'm too silly. FIA will never do something. F1 will never do something so transparent. It will always be cloaks and daggers, because it's the oldest truism in F1 history, and F1 doesn't tend to repeat as far as its history, but sometimes it does rhyme. Oh, and by the way, we must have a conversation about Tsunoda-san and the Red Bull driver pairings, mustn't we? Why? Well, because going into the Mexico Grand Prix weekend, every man and their dog realised that Helmut Marko had said that they were going to make an announcement around Yuki Tsunoda's future at the Mexican Grand Prix weekend. Everybody thinks Tsunoda is gone. $20 million US dollars, excuse me, is how much Honda are paying for him to be in that seat. Erstwhile, it was 10 million when he was at Racing Bulls. Now he's at the big team alongside Max and underperforming, by the way. 20 million is the price, because today's is not yesterday's price. Of course, when Honda go and join forces with Aston Martin, what do you think is going to happen to that $20 million? Gonzo, Fugazi, fade to black. It will no longer be there, accessible for Tsunoda. So what happens then to Tsunoda-san? Because he's out underperformed, hasn't he? He's been nowhere near Maximilian Verstappen as well. You'd expect it to be like, I don't know. I like Yuki. I think Yuki's a half decent peddler. Is he Red Bull caliber though? Has he performed this year sufficient to fend off an Arvid Lindblad, a fire-breathing rookie in Isaac Hadjar, who everybody says has the style to tame that RB21, who is similar in terms of the handling dynamic that he likes to Max Verstappen? Absolutely not. They will bin off Tsunoda-san. They will get in Arvid Lindblad in that Racing Bull seat alongside Liam Lawson. So too they'll have Alex Dunn to pick from as a reserve driver. And at the head of the table, of course, it will be Max CX next year alongside Isaac Hadjar. Bet your bottom dollar. Here's what they were saying though. And again, this comes from Ronald Vording, who has a very close relationship with the one that they call Dr. Helmut, Marco. He says, Marco says, and again, this is Ronald Vording on Twitter. Marco says that it was a good reference point, the Mexican Grand Prix, for their 2026 driver choices, but that he and Lauren Mekies, team principal of Red Bull Racing, said yesterday that those choices have been postponed till, quote, around Abu Dhabi, unquote. Techie. Listen, if they want to delay it, I don't know what they're delaying the inevitable for at this stage. Lauren Mekies also expounded upon that, saying, we know everybody would prefer, they're going to take their time. We know, however, Lauren Mekies talking now, quote, everyone will prefer us to make a decision as soon as possible, but we are in no hurry. We'll take all the time that we need. And we also want to give the drivers every opportunity to ultimately show who the best drivers are. Go on, Lauren Mekies, then. How long do you need to assess Yuki Tsunoda? Really? 7 races back to back and no points. As far as underperformance, that's unprecedented, isn't it, from a Red Bull Racing driver? That is chaos. And again, they don't want to destabilise. There's no point rocking the driver pairing boat mid-season. Of course there isn't. But bloody Nora, like, come out and put Yuki out of his misery. For Pete's sake, surely. Red Bulls, continues Lauren Mekies, is in no hurry to make a decision because all drivers formally have Red Bull Racing contracts. And again, this is reminiscent of Checo Perez, right? Once bitten, twice shy, as far as the financial resource penalty that they had to pay to Checo Perez, circa 30 million to sever his contract then. And as well, they might be shy, hesitant to repeat the mistakes of Christmas past. It's going to get techier than techie things. Go on, I need to tell you guys about Oscar. Listen, I don't know what to say. Listen, I was watching Oscar post-race and he seems like a little boy lost. Whereas before, earlier on in the season, he was just like, I don't know. He seemed metronomic. He seemed bulletproof, didn't he? Missed the consistency, missed the stoicism. Now all of a sudden, his bloody, even his body language is just like, he looks like a lost little boy. And again, when you hear him talk, I don't want to confuse his countenance or his body language with his performance on track, but neither one are looking good. Like, he just looks like he doesn't want to be there, quite frankly. Like, the words that are coming out of his mouth are not saying as much, but he oozes lack of desire. I don't know what's going on, chat. Now, I get the low grip thesis, and tell me which one of the next 4 tracks are high grip. I think he'll struggle at Brazil. I think he'll also struggle at Las Vegas. Okay, Abu Dhabi, he'll give up FP1 to another driver, so he might struggle there also. Qatar, he may go well if past his prologue, but I don't know. I'm rooting for Oscar massively. Do you think he'll do well in Brazil? Did he do well in Brazil last year? Miami. He's techie, and I know it was wet then, so maybe that's an anomalous circumstance for which we need to normalise. I don't know. This weekend he was talking a bit, said it's a mystery. And doesn't that concern you even more, Safak? What? You, in order to fix for a problem, first you need to understand what the problem is. And Oscar Piastri said he's trying to drive the car a little bit differently. It's tech. He said, John, you're a legend, mate. 100k incoming. This weekend he was talking is a bit sad. Jason says Senna would have 4-hour-long debriefs with McLaren engineers who'd be the first to arrive at a Grand Prix track and the last to leave each each day of a Grand Prix weekend. I mean, you've got to work hard, eh? Sometimes I heard somebody say the other day that you show off in public what you've practiced in private. And maybe Oscar needs to go away and have a look at that. Maybe he needs to, per Peter D. Wins, a friend of the channel, maybe he needs to just dial in right. Remember who he is. Forget all of the trappings and all of the nonsense around him. Maybe that's what he needs to do. I don't know. I don't have the answer for Oscar Piastri. But what I do know is that we're about to embark on 4 tracks that he's never gone well around. What I do know is that at one point he was leading Max Verstappen, who was third in the championship, by 104 points over the past few race weekend before Mexican Grand Prix. Max Verstappen took 64 points out of that lead. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Max Verstappen, there's been a lot made around penalties or lack thereof. George Russell said, how very dare the FIA not give penalties? George has a right to speak because he was nowhere near Max or Charles or Lewis going into turn 1. So what did he have to say? Max Verstappen was absolutely on the money not to give a place back to George because he was nowhere near him as at the apex. Now, of course, Max cut a corner. Of course, he went down the runoff area. But Max, in contrast to Sir Lewis Hamilton, knows how to make the judges, the stewards, have to make a decision. Make it difficult for them. There should never be a slam dunk. If you have devilment and if you are a skullduggerous F1 driver, then in my opinion, when there's a yellow flag, you do one of these and then you put your foot straight to the floor as far as the throttle's concerned. Like there is advantage in brinksmanship in Formula 1. There is now and always has been. And I think Lewis, bless him, I don't think he deserved the penalty. If anything, it should have been a 5-second one. But they didn't give him the penalty for going down the runoff area. They gave him the penalty for accruing and keeping an advantage. If Lewis Hamilton just comes off the throttle and doesn't give a place up, but allows those behind him to catch him up and get in his DRS, at the very least dynamite, then I think we're having ourselves a different conversation. But this is like devilment. I suppose Lewis is dealing with. I'll extend Lewis some grace. I mean, 7-time champion, eh? GOAT settings, first round Hall of Fame, when he's had his Weetabix as he had done around the Mexican Grand Prix. Still not a bad peddler. 50 points now adrift of Charles Leclerc, but Charles Leclerc's bloody 28 years old. You know what I mean? He's a god tier peddler in his prime, fire breathing dragon, full of ice, and vinegar. This is apples and oranges, is it not? It is almost, it's an exercise in futility to compare Lewis Hamilton at the ripe old age of 40, soon to be 41. Father Time is undefeated, undisputed, pound for pound, has never lost a round. For the avoidance of doubt, it is therefore an exercise in futility, as at the time of writing, to compare Lewis to Charles. Wind back 10 years, if you jump in a time machine and get Lewis of 10 years ago, like, do you know what I mean? A 30-year-old Lewis Hamilton versus Charles Leclerc, and then we have ourselves a completely different conversation. Then it will get techier than techie things. But George had this to say, didn't he? He was like, I don't know what the FIA are doing. I don't know how so many people went off Charles Leclerc. Please see Maximilian Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and only one person got a penalty. He had a name, and his name was Lewis Hamilton. So surely Lewis Hamilton fans said, that isn't fair. Lewis Hamilton didn't deserve a penalty. And I would concur on this occasion. I don't think Lewis deserved the penalty. But yet and still, Lewis has to know at this juncture, so long and deep into his career is he, that the stewards won't hesitate. The race director loves to penalise him, some Lewis Hamilton. So I don't know. I don't want to victim blame here, but I feel like Lewis Hamilton is old and grey enough, long enough in the teeth as far as his Formula 1 career to realise that there is a skullduggery play here, because there is lap time in it. Max Verstappen knows, and that's why when he was confronted with the comments of George Russell, well, George thinks everybody should have got a penalty. George thinks that you should have got a penalty, Max. You know what Max had to say? That's not my problem, because he knows how to work the room as far as the judges and the race director are concerned. He knows what to do. Every time they have to make a decision, apart from Barcelona this year, he makes their time. It makes their lives super difficult. They have to make a decision. You must always play the way that you're facing. You think the penalty was? Not the 10-second, Johan. Not the 10-second. It would be disingenuous of me. Listen, I've been critical of Sir Lewis in my past. At the altar of love, of course, always. Irrespective of what the Sir Lewis Hamilton cult evangelist would love to say, but even me, as critical as I've been of my guy Lewis in the past, I don't think I can't co-sign not a 10-second. A friend of the channel, Peter Winder, said Lewis didn't deserve a penalty at all. I tell you this much, you bet your bottom dollar they would have given him anything had he just backed off the throttle ever so slightly and done the rhetorical wave your hand up before a cheeky yellow flag to make sure the stewards and the marshals and the race director are aware that you are repenting for your sins of the automotive pugilistic variety. You guys have been legends. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Oh, and by the way, bloody Nora, I was going to go without the compulsory D1 Max Glaze. Listen, I watched Max towards the dying embers of the race yesterday and I thought, this isn't bad. This is Max Verstappen in his pump. I felt like he'd lucked out as far as the strategy a little bit, but there were very many drivers competing for the Driver of the Day award. Mention no names. Ollie Behrman, Charles Leclerc was God tier. Lando Norris was God tier all weekend long. However, seeing Max Verstappen do what he did on their tyres, closing down Charles Leclerc, seeing the metronomic consistency, 37 laps on their soft compound tyres. Lando did 34 in a McLaren, which almost reversed tyre degs. Max Verstappen, 37 laps, and as near as makes no difference, every single one of them laps were the same bloody tyre. That makes no sense. That absolutely makes no sense. And they can accuse me of D1 max glazing if they want. So let me read out these lap times. I should have put them on bloody screen. Lap 39, 21.2, 21.4, 21.4, 21.4, 21.4, 21.4, 21.4, 21. I issue not. This is me actually, I'm reading it. 21.7, 21.2, 21.4, 21.2, 21.4, 21.1, 21. Mate, who is he? Whence did he come? Where did they get him? Honestly, I'm telling you, what you're seeing in a car, in a dog of a car, an SH1T box, and the dude's that consistent when it's techie to handle. 21.2, 21.5, 21.2, 2.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.4, 0.4. I just don't understand, chat. I went away and I listened to the podcast as is compulsory, did myself some due diligence as somebody who's inherently secure about his opinions that all of them might be wrong. I go and check my own maths, assume that I'm incorrect with a view to check my maths. And everybody on the podcast, all of the accredited journos were like, that might be, that final stint, those 37 laps from Max Verstappen may well be the best stint that Max Verstappen has ever done. I didn't realise, chat, what we were looking at. The Max Verstappen particularly in that final stint did something. They can call it D1 glazing all they want to, but is it glazing if it's rooted in some sort of objectivity and truth? It's going to get techie between now and the next Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is in the hunt. Implausible, but not impossible. If anybody can, you bet your bottom dollar that chap, Maximilian Verstappen, can.